Welcome to Retirement in Focus with Chris Mediate. Chris helps guide local families on the path toward a successful retirement. Chris and the team at Mediate Financial will help you learn about strategies for creating income in retirement, managing your wealth, and minimizing taxes. Welcome to Retirement in Focus with Chris Mediate.
Welcome to Retirement in Focus with Chris Mediate. I'm Amy Sharp, and joining me, founder of Mediate Financial, Chris Mediate, located right here in Youngstown, Ohio. Retiring early may sound like a dream you wish would come true, but when an early retirement is forced upon you, it can be less than ideal. Today, Chris tells you what to do if that happens to you. Plus, in our Retirement Clear View, Chris shares the rules of thumb for saving in retirement. And Chris, it is great to be back with you.
Great to be here, Amy, as always.
We've got a great show for everyone today. You know, when you hear the term early retirement, it really does conjure up some great ideas about leaving work behind, getting a jump start on living out that dream. But for those that are forced into retirement before they're ready, that can be a whole different story. And that conversation looks differently. And I'm wondering, what do you say to them when they come in and talk to you?
It's very different because they're nervous. They're scared. I mean, it's all our dreams, right? We think about, here we go. We've been saving. We've been working 30, 40 years at our job, and we have our way that we think we're going to go out, right? It's on our terms. And then all of a sudden when that gets flipped, Amy, and it's not on their terms, right? And some people feel unprepared. They don't feel ready, and it becomes a little bit scary for them. Perfect example. I had someone come in our office, and we all know what happened during COVID, and we had a job cut, and they basically went in and cut their job. And when they came into my office, all of a sudden it's this reality that this is it. This is all I've done. And then they say, okay, but wait a second. This was my goal at some point. Do I have to go back to work? Can I retire early? So they want to know what it is. And so when we build a financial plan, and that's where for the first time, maybe especially in that particular client's instance, first time they ever had a financial plan where it actually showed them what to do, not to be scared, and that they can do it, because for the first time somebody actually taught them about lifestyle and what it's like and what it would do. And that's what we were able to do. So we were able to help that person overcome that fear and be able to determine that they could retire early. So again, but you heard me say one key thing: have a plan.
Have a plan. None of us saw a global pandemic coming, that's for sure. That's one big reason that a lot of people were forced to leave early. What are some other reasons that might be a situation? So,
we see downsizing, right? So corporate downsizing. How about health event? That's one of the scarier things is, again, some people, that's just the way they're built. Sometimes that happens. We've seen caring for parents. That's been a big one, which has been surprising because that's not something, again, we've envisioned to have to do. Sometimes in our financial plans is have to do that. You'll see age discrimination, different things like that. But again, all those things are not on somebody's terms, and I think that's part of the problem is we see these things, and sometimes, again, are we prepared for it? How many people can answer that question?
You talked about that plan. It's so important. If we don't have a plan in place, so many different things can go awry.
Yes.
And so how do we answer those questions, make sure that we're going to be okay with that plan?
So, and I think, again, a lot of people that have come into my office first times don't have financial plans, don't have written financial plans. So the first things we want to do, again, is establish a proper way to go about determining what your number is, what's your lifestyle, what kind of retirement income do you want? So that's how we start backing into this, because, again, the first step of creating a solid income plan, right, goes hand in hand with your entire financial plan. It is the starting point, because what I tell people is this: do they even understand what their lifestyle is? And some people don't realize that. I've found that some people are retired and think that they're going to, earn less, and they end up, when we start factoring in Social Security and what they can get from their investments, they forget about take-home pay. It's net, right? And a lot of times they don't realize that. And again, but that's aligning that goal. That's getting them out of this. So first steps, income plans. Your investment plan has to go hand in hand with that. Your tax plan has to go hand in hand with that. Okay, so all this kind of connects, right? Legacy plan. And you want to have healthcare That's a big one. We want to factor healthcare in your financial plan. So these are all beginning steps that your financial plan should have. So you should be able to answer all of those questions. That's what a complete financial plan will do.
And you mentioned earlier how someone finds out that they're forced to retire early. They're kind of down, like, how am I going to do this? And then all of a sudden, as you're talking with them, you're able to think, okay, maybe I can retire.
Right.
That confidence piece is
You said
key.
the key word.
I can't imagine how much better someone feels once they have that comprehensive plan in place.
That's right.
And they know moving forward, they can do this.
That's right. I mean, that's the benefit of a plan, and your plan is supposed to give you the confidence. And just like you'll hear me hammer over and over again, you want those questions answered. What happens if I have to retire early? What happens, if there's a stock market crash? What happens if we have inflation rising? What happens if we have a bad economy? Because those are all things that people stay up at night thinking about. And they don't have those answers. So a comprehensive financial plan is to give you those answers. It's to give you that confidence. And I think that was reiterating your point. That's part of the job of a financial plan and an advisor in our team. That's what we want to do, is make sure that your plan is giving you the confidence to know that you could do it.
Okay, I'm feeling better about this already.
Great.
All right, thank you so much. Love your job so much that you think you'll never retire? Up next, Chris explains why that plan could backfire. And later in Retirement Clearview, Chris shares the rules of thumb for saving in retirement. Stay tuned.
You have a club for every scenario. A driver for the long holes. Wedges to get you over the hazards. And a putter for when you need a touch of finesse. What about your retirement? Will you have enough to play the back nine? Call to set your 15-minute phone visit today, and let's find out. Get a second set of eyes on your retirement plan.
And welcome back. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm joined once again by Chris Mediate. And it's been said, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And if that's true, why would you ever want to retire? And thinking about that saying, do you ever see people come to you and say, I have no intentions of retiring. I'm going to work as long as I can. But in the meantime, they haven't really made it a priority to save when that day should come. What do you say to them?
I thought you were going to sing.
There's no singing on this show, Chris. There's no singing.
What do I say? I get it. I do get it. I do understand that people love what they're doing. But the problem is we're not, that's not sometimes in our dictation of how this is going to play out. Meaning, what happens if something happens early? We can love what we're doing. What happens if there's a health event? What happens if something forces us to go early? And not saving, not planning is a big mistake. Because we could use those excuses, but the truth is we're not in control of what is going to happen. And so don't we want to be that in control? And that's what I tell everybody. Getting a financial plan, getting things in order, right? Having that conversation is just preparing you. If you want to work forever, that's okay, but just create the balance. Make sure that you're saving money, that you're prepared for the day in event that changes. We may say that today, 2 years from now, that may change, right? That may end up naturally happening. So again, you want to make sure that you're prepared. So when we talk about not being able to being prepared. So if we don't know where our money is coming from, right? We don't know exactly how to handle a situation. That's where it becomes a problem. So when we just say, look, if we're forced out to retire, or we think, hey, look, I'm just going to keep working forever. What happens when the day comes where maybe that isn't the case? And then what happens? Now maybe the only thing that we're stuck to do is living on Social Security, remember, that's only supposed to be a supplement. That's not supposed to be somebody's entire means of how they're going to retire. So why are you not balancing yourself by creating some savings plan and having a general backup plan? Because what's the worst thing that happen if you save too much money and end up not needing it?
Okay, here's one for you. Former heavyweight champion boxer Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Being forced to leave your job before you're ready can leave you feeling like you've been sucker punched by Mike Tyson of all people, right?
Who's going to mess with Mike Tyson?
It's not a good feeling.
No, good example.
I do think this is probably an example of, like you said, having that plan, having extra funds. That emergency fund comes into play here. How much do we need, and how do we know?
Yeah, I mean, so the foundation, we talk about bases in your financial plans of what you have, and how many people overlook an emergency fund? Sometimes all we're doing is we're so focused on the future. What happens if there's a life event that we aren't prepared for? And that's why we always say creating an emergency fund first. It's foundational to everything, because if you don't have an emergency fund, Amy, you haven't really earned the right to save, okay? Because we're doing something that's so futuristic that we need to take care of now. So recommended, 6 to 9 months worth of what you make really should, to cover your bills, I should say, to cover your bills should be put aside for those rainy days, for the events that you get punched in the mouth. You want to be able to say, that's okay, I got it. And I think that's the key, is let's start saving with an emergency fund first, so that we're very, very, very prepared for that.
You said 6 to 9 months, Chris, but I feel like, that's probably growing a little bit, right? With inflation, the cost of everything?
It is. And so, back in the day, somebody say, well, I can go get another job, and it might have been 3 months. It might have been 6 months, okay? Now we're saying 6 to 9, and in some cases, Amy, it's a year, because look at our job market today, and especially what we have going on with the situation we're in. And so, again, is your age going to play a role into this? Are you going to be readily being able to go back out there in the workforce to be able to do it? So it may take you longer. So if you think about, if it's age related, okay, we think about, what would it take for me to have to go back to work? So again, is it going to make you feel better if you're saving more, right, ahead of time, so that you're prepared again? If this is going to take longer, I know that I have the resources to be able to do it.
We all have a different idea of what we want our lifestyle to be. That emergency savings, of course, makes a difference.
It starts, because I think, again, I'm not so sure that people relate to that, right? Because when I sit and I ask that question, how much do we have set aside in emergency funds? And I always tell people, the key is you always want to make your money intentional, right? We want to have a purpose. So if I said to you, is this an emergency? Sometimes I'd say, why do you have this money in your savings account? And sometimes people will say, I don't know. And we'd say, what if we labeled that, right? Is that enough? Is that your emergency fund? As long as I don't have to use it in your retirement plan, this is something that could be a foundation for you to use in case of emergency. So what we're doing is we're labeling it, we're making it intentional, we're giving it a purpose. And remember, a lot of financial planning just is laying it out. It's what if I call it? It's almost like putting money in an envelope, but now we have it labeled. We know what that purpose is. But we should be starting foundationally with that emergency fund.
Great insight, as always. Thank you so much. And straight ahead, Chris shares the rules of thumb for saving. That's next in Retirement Clear View. And still ahead, Chris answers some of your questions. Stay with us.
Everybody needs a plan. If Carol's ever going to retire, she needs a plan. So does Bob. Jim and Susan, they need a plan. And Puddles over there? Yeah, he's gonna need a plan too. You? Yeah, you probably need a plan. Whoever you are, whatever you do, you can use a plan for retirement. We can help.
How much do you have saved for retirement? Now, cut that number in half. That's the impact inflation could have. Think about what that could do to your lifestyle and spending power in retirement. Inflation is on the rise. How can you protect your retirement dreams? Start by getting this free guide to understand inflation and the 5 easy steps you can take to help keep it from downgrading your retirement. You can't stop inflation, but if you act now, you may be able to minimize its impact on your retirement. Get your free copy now.
In today's Retirement Clear View, Chris shares tips on how to save in retirement. Chris?
Thanks, Amy. Now for our Retirement Clear View. People ask me all the time, how do I determine how much I should save? How do I determine a saving goal target. And it's different for everyone, but let's talk about some rules for thumb that I always say to at least give you an idea of how to structure this, how to start it. And again, it's all going to be, of course, as we know, the younger we start, the better. But for those of us that are just really trying to figure out, okay, how do I kind of know what I should have at a certain time frame? And it usually goes just like this. By age 40, you want to have 3 times, now I repeat, 3 times your annual income saved by that point. So that at least gives you an idea in the future, like, okay, am I hitting my target? Am I getting there? So when I'm younger now, it'll give us a general idea of where we are so that, again, we know whether or not we're trying to set a target for what we're saving for. By age 50, you want to start looking at about 6 times your annual income by that point. So as you notice, the older we get, the more and more we're trying to build that nest egg. That means more money, more things that we want to use for our retirement incomes at that point. By age 60, you should have about 8 times your annual income. So again, when we're doing this math, so if we're trying to determine, say I'm 45 years old and I'm trying to look and say, look, am I saving enough money? These are just really good kind of rules of thumbs targets. And when we say by age 67, why do we say age 67? So for someone like myself, that's our Social Security full retirement age at that point. So that's a really good rule of thumb. So we say having 10 times your annual income by that point is a really good idea of like trying to set a saving target. But let me just say this. Those are targets. Those are rules of thumb. That might not be true for some of you, because here's the real thing. When someone comes into my office the very first time and they want to know where to start, and again, our team, our process is a little different than some, but what we want to do is we want to try to find out, okay, what's your number? And when I say that number, that's an idea of how much retirement income that you wish to receive. One, as I keep repeating, money to live, which is going to cover our base necessities, and money to have a life. And we can figure out how to make those monthly numbers. And so that's what I want to know. I want to help you achieve that because, again, remember, when we retire, okay, we cannot retire without income. We want to create those paychecks. So building a savings is what allows us to be able to start that process, but we want to know, how does it go? And so I want to know what your lifestyle is. That's how you want to establish, because all of our lifestyles, the things that we want, all our goals are going to be different. Each person is going to be different. You're going to be different than maybe your parents were. You're going to be different than your neighbor. You're going to be different than your cousins. So again, it's so personal. It's built on you. That's why having a savings goal, and the quicker I start to determine, okay, what kind of lifestyle do I want to see myself at? What kind of goals am I trying to set for myself? That's how we want to start determining what type of savings we can do. Because again, if we're just throwing a dart at a board and we're just saving and saving and saving, and it's causing us, while we're still working, maybe to sacrifice some of the fun things that we're doing to enjoy life, we might not just have a goal. So by establishing a clear goal and lifestyle, that's where it comes from. So I just keep repeating over and over again, it's less about the dollar amount. I have retired a lot of non-millionaires, right? Because there's no rule of thumb. Things that we read, people assume that you need a certain dollar amount to retire and you can't do it. A lot of that is false. And a lot of that, you have to realize how personal retirement planning is and how personal it is to you. And that's why it's important when you come in to talk to an advisor, make sure. That's why you want to seek them out. Are they talking to you about your lifestyle? Are they talking to you about your goals? Because that's where this starts. Anybody can save money, okay? We all can set those targets at 40, 50, 60, but the question is, what is it that I really, really, really want? And I think that's where it comes into Sumer. It's more about you, right? And then when we can do that, then that helps, again, dictate the strategy. That's what I tell people. How you want to have your lifestyle and goals are going to dictate the type of investments you may be in. It might dictate the amount of income or where we have to get that money from, whether it's safe or more risk. But it really comes back down to, how do I manage my savings? And this really should come back to you first. figuring it out. If somebody come into my office and doesn't know their number, and they're saying, I'm retiring, in a month, or I'm retiring in 2 weeks, guess what? We kind of have a problem, because the sooner that we know our number, our amount that we want for our lifestyle, the more that we want to set our goals. Once we know that, then we can establish a proper income plan, a proper investment plan. That's what we do in our office. Part of our Clearview retirement plan is to determine that. Income goals, right? We want to have an income plan. We want to have an investment plan that is going to be dictated by the type of income you want to receive, which again, I'm going to reiterate, is based on your lifestyle and your goals and only you. And that's why it's really important, because we do want to start with a savings. I'm going to tell everybody, you want to save as much as you can. But when we can start really focusing in and targeting what it is that we really want, then our savings is going to then be able to dictate. And I think that's where you really want to start, is having a true financial plan, because that plan is going to tell you exactly how much you have, how much you can do, and what you can do with it. And so that's this week. So we're going to go back to you, Amy. That's this week's Retirement Clearview.
Thanks, Chris. Still to come, we'll hear directly from you in our Q&A section. Retirement in Focus with Chris Mediate continues right after this.
Our generation has always believed that a hard day's work is its own reward. So, for some of us, it's hard to turn off that work switch come retirement. But imagine what can happen when that work switch becomes a life switch. Then you realize that every day in retirement is its own reward. We can help you flip the switch to make work days become life days.
And now it's time to get to some of the questions you have for Chris today. I know this is a favorite segment of yours. You ready?
It is. Yes,
okay.
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, here we go. This one's from Bill in Austintown. I'm thankful I still have a job, but my employer just sent out a letter saying they are no longer matching our 401k contributions. Should I stop contributing and put the money elsewhere, or leave it as it is?
Wow, Bill. Well, at least Bill's saving, and good, Bill, that you have a job. That's a delicate question, but here's the situation. Again, if we sit back and we talk about our entire retirement plan, some people use 401ks. Bill, in this case, if you don't trust yourself to be a good disciplined saver, and remember, you're still saving money, that's really key. The question just is, are you able then, because remember, the 401k, and Bill didn't allude whether it's a Roth 401k, but let's assume that it's a pre-tax 401k here, okay? And you are putting away, at some point, you're going to be pulling that money out of which is going to be taxed, okay? So again, how much tax diversification do we have in the rest of my portfolio, Bill? Do I have a taxable account? Do I have a tax deferred account, which is what we're talking about, the 401k? Do I have a tax-free account? So this might be an opportune time to go back and readjust yourself and relook at, how am I saving my money? Am I diversified enough? And am I comfortable? Is everything then putting in a tax deferred an account? So this might be your opportunity to change that. But again, the key here, Amy, is Bill has to be disciplined in order to continue to save. We want you to still save money, Bill. So if it's helping you go in your 401k, then matching sometimes doesn't necessarily matter, okay? Because it's a way that you're saved. But I think in a bigger picture of things, this is your perfect opportunity to get your plan in place now to determine, is my tax plan coordinating with my income plan and my investment plan? And this might be Bill's opportunity to change that up a little bit, where some money can be more diversified in the way he's saving it.
Okay, here is a question from Shelley in Warren. I'm 54 and was hoping to retire in 10 years or less, but after reassessing my IRA account and seeing where I could be paying up to 65% of my savings to various taxes, I realize I either need to work longer or get a better tax plan in place. I'm at a loss of where to start. Can you help?
Yes. Okay. Taxes, the dreaded taxes, and we all talk about them. Where she's looking, or where you want to look to start, okay, is my tax plan should be part of, again, my overall retirement plan. So as she had mentioned, that it's all tax deferred. So she does realize, right, you are recognizing that that money is going to come out and be taxed, and it's going to be taxed at the current tax rate that you're in. So the question is, do you have a true tax plan? Are you looking at how that tax deferred is matching with the income that we need when we retire? So you've set a target goal, but have you really put it together? Meaning, how is it fitting with my Social Security? Which means now we've got to go back and look at our tax plan, because maybe, right, we start pulling a little bit more money out of our IRA or our 401ks now and delay Social Security so that we're paying less tax on Social Security later in life. So what you want to do is foundationally go back and start looking deeper at your overall tax withdrawal plan. And that's where I tell her, so you think, taxes are where they are, what they're going to be in the future. So maybe this is now where you have 10 years where we start looking at potentially doing maybe Roth conversions. Maybe we do something called stuffing the tax bracket, where maybe now we're not putting as much away in a tax deferred account, but we're again creating that better tax diversification where we're creating more of a taxable account, which we might want to use first. And so these are things that you really need to go talk to somebody about, even somebody like myself, is because, again, that's part of an overall plan. Is we need to know withdrawals and taxes, which she is already aware of. So the question is, what do you do to stop that in the future? And it's certainly, let's hope it's not work longer, so we can be proactive here. And that means let's start looking at what we can do now in our tax situation, and maybe cutting back on tax deferred accounts right now, maybe looking at converting to Roth IRAs, which again in the future, Amy, will be tax-free, assuming that holds up. Okay, so this is her perfect opportunity. She has 10 years. So now you want to be proactive and start maybe looking at doing something about that right now.
Okay, one more from Greg in Canfield. He says, is there a good rule of thumb for how much of my IRA should be invested in safe investments at age 60, or is it just a matter of personal preference?
Again, I think personal preference is really big, because when we sit and talk about how much risk one is taking in their portfolio, that risk should be aligned with, again, I keep coming back to this, but your overall financial plan. Do I want my income being affected by what the stock market does? Do I want my income being affected by what the economy does? And so, again, that's more of a conversation where you're going to sit down and look at your overall plan and really assess your risk. Because if we're saying, are there things to be more conservative? The question is, okay, maybe we do look at something more conservative if you don't want whatever retirement income you are looking for to be associated with what's going on in the world today or the market. So again, that's going to be part of your overall income plan, your investment plan, and that should be connected, because we can be conservative. We just don't want to be too conservative. Let's remember that.
Okay, Chris, great insight as always. I appreciate your answers. And if you have a question, you can visit our website. We just might use one of your questions on a future show. And don't hesitate to act on the information you've heard today. It never hurts to call, even if it's for a second opinion. Don't wait. Call now. For Chris and the team at Mediate Financial, I'm Amy Sharp. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you right back here next week.